Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jono White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jono White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to do just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Malcolm Nicolson. Malcolm is the head of school at Trinity International School in Hyderabad in India. Malcolm, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Now, we are both cricket tragics, we've just learnt, and spent a solid 10 minutes pre-podcast chatting about all things cricket. So we'll see how easily we can link any leadership talk in this podcast to cricket, I'll be working very hard. But let's first give it'd be great for listeners to get an idea of, I guess, who you are and what you're doing at the moment. A bit of a window into what it's like to be Malcolm, head of school in Hyderabad.
Thank you very much. And thank you for not talking so much about cricket. It's obviously a delicate subject for an English cricket fan talking to an Australian at the moment.
True.
As you can tell, I'm British, although you'll hear from my life story that I've moved around a lot, and that actually started at birth. My parents were based in Zambia, so I was born in Zambia, grew up there for just a short while, and then grew up in the northeast of England, in Middlesbrough, which we fondly refer to as the home of European football. And growing up there, I had some big influences that I think actually impacted what I believe and how I behave now as a leader. I was in the Boys Brigade for many, many years until I was 18, and I did the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme. And both of those experiences had profound effects on me and impacts where I learned about service, volunteering, working for others, and teamwork and collaboration and all those kind of skills that you don't necessarily learn in school. I did everything from trying to entertain children on the children's ward at Middlesbrough General Hospital through to digging ponds by a nuclear power station and everything in between. So I think those were formative years. I went to Edinburgh University in Scotland, where I was in the Officers Training Corps for a while, and again learned a lot about leadership, but without actually ever thinking about the art of leadership. Just wanting to be more influential, I suppose. Maybe there's something in my psyche, but I enjoyed leading, and I enjoyed the idea of command tasks and leading platoons, and so on. From there, I became a teacher, a science teacher. I worked in the UK, in Liverpool, for 3 years, and then moved on to an international teaching job in Nassau, in the Bahamas. I was lucky enough to live in the Bahamas for 4 years, where incidentally I represented the Bahamas as a footballer, believe it or not. And not that I'm very good, but I did. Then I then got some of the best advice I've ever had, and this is where a lot of my leadership thinking is based upon. Is my head at that point, Dennis McKinnon, was an amazing man, and he showed such empathy, such compassion, and understanding for everybody in the school community, and I loved it there. But he said, "Look, for the betterment of your career, you've just got to get out. You've got to get out, learn, get new experiences, and go." And much as I enjoyed it, I took his advice, best advice I ever had, and I left.
Wow.
After 4 years, and I went to Thailand and worked at NIST International School in Bangkok. And that's where my leadership journey started. And it's also where my connection with the International Baccalaureate began. The IB, International Baccalaureate, provides curriculum for international schools around the world, and NIST was teaching their programs. And it was at that point where I got to meet some great people and start to learn about leadership. And people like Adrian Watts, Dave Monk, and other colleagues showed me that having a vision is great, and how to have a vision and how to communicate that vision, but that you can't actually get anywhere with your vision unless you show humility, humbleness, and get buy-in. So I learned a lot as a leader then. I was lucky enough to get involved with the IB community and get a role with the IB itself. And at that time, they were based in Cardiff in Wales. So I moved from Thailand after 8 years, picked up a wife and a child on the way, and ended up in Cardiff with the IB, leading their program development for the program for their 11 to 16-year-olds. So I was responsible for curriculum development for the world for the IB, for that age group. Wow. Then their office relocated to The Hague. I moved over to The Hague in the Netherlands and continued working for the IB for another 5 years. And at that point, it was what an experience to be able to develop a vision, to develop an idea of what education could look like, but on a global scale, not just for one school or for one school district or a county or a province, but actually for the world. And then looking to how to get stakeholder buy-in, stakeholder feedback, and to work out, while you've got 1,000 different schools, one change might impact some schools one way, like in Australia or the US, but international schools in Singapore or Peru might be impacted a different way. So the beauty of taking into account stakeholder views and feedback. I then ran my own business for a few years out of the UK, and I'm now in India at Trinity International School and loving it. We have a wonderful 70-acre campus. But what our challenges are now, we have a great community, outstanding students, wonderful teachers, but we've got to navigate the current crisis of COVID, online, offline learning, and we've got
Yeah.
to navigate what IB programs believe in, because we have IB programs here, and what the parents demand, what universities are looking for. And so how to develop a vision for the future of this school that meets the needs of both contemporary learners and maybe some more traditional views of parents and universities in both India and beyond. So I'm loving living in India. It's a great place to be. Of course, the Hyderabad sunrises on the doorstep is helpful. And
Yeah.
on top of that, the people are wonderful. The food is amazing. I'm having a great time. But navigating COVID is an almighty challenge. So there you go. That's me in 1 5-minute ramble.
That was very succinct. I think somehow just from hearing your story of traveling around the world and the different roles you've had, I feel like just from hearing the story, it's inspiring. So I can't wait to dig into it a little bit because I have so many questions I could ask you. But let's start with when you were young and when you were growing up, and you said born in Zambia. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So in those formative years, when you were, I guess, sort of growing up, are there any? You mentioned, and I love how you pinpointed that. Going, there was something in me that always, uh, like, just naturally lent towards influence. And
Yeah.
do you remember any specific moments when you were growing up where that were really really shaped you around that in Boys Brigade, or any of those other places that were really sort of pivotal aha moments as a young person?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. You do wonder what drives you from inside. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of it is nurture, and a lot of it is genetic. And I remember in short trousers, at the age of 9, 10, 11 years old in the Boys Brigade, as the section leader. Thinking back on it, I didn't have to be the section leader, but I realized after a while I liked helping people. And what emerged for me was when I was working at, it's called Teesmouth Field Centre. I was 14, 15 years old. And this is where I was digging ponds next to Hartlepool Nuclear Power Station, but also
Yes.
taking local Sunday school and school groups on nature trails around the area. It's heavily industrialized. Birthplace of Captain Cook, by the way, Middlesbrough. Heavily
Yes.
industrialized part of the UK, but a fascinating connection with ecology. And I used to love taking parties around and leading them. And there's something about helping people to understand, helping people to enjoy. You I know are a great representative of Brisbane and potentially Brisbane's tourist board. I am the same for Teesside and Middlesbrough. I
Yes.
would show people around our bridges and industrial heritage anytime. We're very proud of it. But that it was that kind of passion to help people to have fun and to enjoy and to learn that really got me going. And I think it might even be a bit to do with being a little bit of a busybody, a bit nosy. I don't know. I always felt when I started working in the schools, for example, that I wanted to be involved with more stuff. I wanted people to buy in and to take things forward. I never felt like sitting back and just going with the flow. I always felt like I wanted to be more involved. And with each school that I was in, I took on more and more responsibilities all the time because I just wanted to be involved and to get a bigger picture view. I don't know what it is. Something inside me drove me. But I think that the Boys Brigade was the first big thing, followed by Duke of Edinburgh, which was at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I love about that story is how I guess looking back now, it's really obvious. You can make the links between that sort of opportunity to show people around your local area. But when you're working with young people like you do in a school, or if if someone has kids or nephews and nieces, and they're doing those sort of things, it's hard to see or necessarily make a connection to something like leading a school in another part of the world. But that's what I love about chatting around, people's
Mm.
childhood experiences, is because it's in these moments that don't seem to have any sort of leadership, big leadership on them. But that's where the seeds are planted for people to
You
start
know, and
discovering passion.
I agree. And I would argue that if you take a learning environment, the best places children learn is often not in the classroom. Obviously, there's a lot of learning happens in the
Yes.
classroom, but it's the stuff that happens on, sports trips, arts trips, theatre trips, museum trips, outdoor education, stuff that Aussies are particularly good at, going out into, uncomfortable, out of your comfort zone situations for a week at a time, and having to be independent and to work with others. They're the times that you learn. And so sometimes I think if you track back to what influenced you to be who you are today, it's those kind of things. I remember it's the expeditions I did on the North Yorkshire moors with my friends when I was absolutely exhausted, riddled with blisters, lost, and on one occasion wandering across a glider runway, which wasn't great. It's those moments that you look back on you and you think, yeah, that's the memories I made. That's the learning that I had. And it wasn't necessarily in my science or maths or humanities classrooms. It was that stuff. And maybe that's what makes us. And maybe for me as an educator, what I am determined to do is to help young people to have as many opportunities beyond the classroom environment as possible. And that's one of the issues with COVID now is that young people for the last 2 years have had a limited number of experiences beyond the classroom, which is where a lot of the character development comes from, that enables them to learn and develop leadership skills.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I think I had a chat with when I was at a school the other day, doing some work with them, and I was chatting about other things. But this sort of came up, and it really surprised me not working day in day out in education with young people. I was really sort of shocked when they talked about some kids who hadn't been able to come back for a long time, um,
Yeah,
needing to almost be taught again, like how to play with other kids. Like there was some things in
yeah,
that they were having to really like. Normally, you wouldn't have to sort of model it too much or really get alongside them and guide them in how to do it, but they were really having to reintroduce some of these things. And I thought I did not even that didn't even cross my
yeah.
mind
Imagine the
with
social
COVID.
skills, the negotiation skills. Young kids trying to negotiate who plays with a particular toy or who plays in the sandpit.
Mm.
There's a lot of skills there that have been forgotten, I'm afraid.
So let's fast forward to your time where you took that massive leap and moved to the Bahamas and sort of that before you were into your first and maybe in your first official leadership roles when you went to Thailand. And do you are there
Yeah.
any are there any are there any moments? Well, actually, yeah. Let me ask this first, then I'll ask something else. Are there any moments in that season that really come to mind as pivotal? You know, I really dropped the ball there, and that was when I had a big aha moment about the importance of such and such. Or sometimes it's going, I had no idea I was capable of that, but when that person came alongside me, I actually found my feet and really loved it. Like any of those sort of moments in that season.
There's a couple stand out from my days in Thailand. One, I had a very close friend and colleague called Sue Hall, who's from Canberra, actually, in Australia. And she was a great guide and a mentor and a leader. And I remember at one point she said to me, "You're a really good teacher." I said, "Oh, thank you." "Do you know why?" I said, "No idea." So she had me for the first time in my life at about the age of 31 thinking about why I was quite good at what I did. And that was
Mm,
leadership. And I recognized that at the time is this is what a real leader does. Because I thought I at the time I thought I want to become a principal and a vice principal. I want to become a leader. And then I saw how she was supporting me and realized, I'm a long way off because she selflessly gave of herself and her time to guide me to be a better person and a more reflective teacher. So I learned from her example about the giving up of your time, your experience, and your life skills. And the other big one I learned was a colleague called Dave Monk, who's still a friend of mine, wonderful man, and he's a head in Italy at the moment. And he was a vice principal, and I'd got a small coordinator role, and I wrote an email to all the teachers, and I was very proud of this email. And I ran off to him and said, "Dave, what do you think of my email?" And he shut the door, said, "Sit down." And he went through my email and pointed out the number of personal pronouns I had used. I, me, my. And he said, "You're just coming off as a boastful little boy." And that has
Wow.
stuck with it has stuck with me forever. It was a hard lesson to learn, but it has stuck with me forever. So when I've had colleagues and bosses subsequently who've talked about my team, my organization, my school, my teachers, my managers, I thought, oh, lose the personal pronoun. We're not
Mm.
yours. It's a we and an our. And he helped me to see very quickly the nature of leadership as a collegial, empowering group thing rather than me, my, and to take my ego out of it. And like anybody else, I have an ego. And and I realized that with that one email, I had shown the whole staff that I was an egotistical maniac. And he really, really helped me. And I've never made that mistake again. And I would encourage anyone else to think about the use of pronouns. It's one of the best lessons I ever learned, and it sticks with me to this day. So thank you, Dave, if you're listening.
That's incredible. Yeah, thank you, Dave. I love that lesson, and what I love is that lesson, because that wouldn't have been easy for Dave. There would have been that would have been uncomfortable, and
Yeah,
having stepping into that moment and giving you that feedback and challenging you on that, not only helped you then, it's helped you since then, and now you're sharing it with who knows what person's going to pick that up and run with it. I've actually heard something similar
exactly.
around hiring and talking about humility
Ah,
and going, when you're hiring someone, just look for, don't make it a black or white sort of rule, but just be aware of the pronouns they're using about previous team experiences, previous leadership experiences, and look for the
yeah,
use of I, my, or verse we, and talking about other people that they worked with. And I think you're right. I think it's a really good self check for anyone out there, and for me included. I'm thinking now, how do we
yeah, and
how do we
quite
communicate?
frankly, I'm glad that I met Dave quite early in my journey. Um, and it was, as you say, it can't have been easy for him, but it was very kind of him. And again, that's the kind of leader that I've always looked up to and always, seen as a role model. Is he exemplifies the idea, like Dennis McKinnon that I mentioned earlier, empathy, compassion, humility, but also demanding a lot of respect because he and Dennis could have the hard conversations, have the tough conversations, but you knew that it wasn't personal, that it was coming out of a good place. And I think we all, as leaders, sometimes you've got to have those hard conversations. But if your colleague knows that you're coming at it with performance improvement, personal improvement as the goal, and it's not a personal attack, then we can all take it professionally, even if it's hard to do.
Yeah, in the previous podcast episode to this that I was recording, we chatted about the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Have you come across that book?
No, sorry, say that again.
Radical. I might be Australian, Australianizing the
Ah,
radical candor. Radical candor. I
oh,
get
I
paid
haven't
out
come
amongst
across
my
that.
French.
No.
No, it's funny you haven't, because you've
Ah,
literally just. That's why it brought it back to mind. You just described exactly what that book is about, which is the four
oh,
quadrants around caring and challenging, and basically saying uh, leaders who care a lot but aren't willing to challenge might think they're being nice, but that's actually not radical candor. That's That's
Ah,
there's words for it in the book. I can't remember what they are. And if people listen to the previous episode, we talked a bit more about it. But then you've got a leader who doesn't care and doesn't challenge, and that's obviously, I think, obnoxious is the word they use in the book. Then you've got a leader who's all challenge but
yes.
doesn't care, and what you've just described nails that fourth quadrant that the whole book's about, which is what does it look like as a leader? If you want to be a great leader and lead with radical candor, then you need to have really high care and care deeply about your people and be willing to step in and challenge them, which is exactly what you just described.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, I haven't read it, but that sounds brilliant. I will look it up, Radical Candor. But you're
Yes.
right. You can't be the leader who just wants to be popular and to say yes, yes, yes. And we've all seen them and learned from them. And I follow football a lot, and you look at a lot of footballers who become managers, and you'll hear them interviewed. Who are you modeling your management style on? And a lot of them will say, well, it's a little bit of maybe Alec Ferguson, a little bit of Arsene Wenger, a little, they take little bits of everybody that
Mm.
they've come across. And I think that's part of this as well, is as sometimes as someone who's reporting to a leader, you do pick up on, yeah, I know, for example, when I was at the IB, my line manager clearly found it very difficult to have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I had to prompt her to actually say the things that I knew were in her head that she had to say to me, uh, because it's not easy. And for some people, it doesn't come very easily to have the hard conversations. For me as well, it's something where you just have to, almost have some inner talk and talk to yourself, because it's not easy, and not all parts of leadership are easy or come naturally. There are the unpleasant parts. So, yeah, we can't just be the person that listens to the last person that was sitting in front of us and nod a lot.
Yeah.
So, radical candor. Thank you. I'll look it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. It's a great book. And I'm interested to know, obviously, Dave really led you well in that space.
Yeah.
And as you reflect, because I know there'll be leaders listening going, how did he do that? How was he able to give such direct feedback, and yet here we are down the track, and you're actually, and it's not that it always works out like this, but down the track you're going, I'm thankful for it. It sounds like you received it relatively well at the time. What was it about how Dave led you that enabled that conversation to happen the way it did?
I think probably the fact is that there had been a year or two leading up to that where I developed a great respect and a liking for him. So I already respected him because I'd seen him as a leader both with young people and with adults in the school community there. So I already had that respect for him, and I think that that's it. That I respected him so much that if he told me um, anything positive or negative about my performance, I would have taken it on board. But he also said it was very, very clear. He didn't beat about the bush. He didn't waffle around it in any way. It was very direct, very to the point. It lasted no more than 5 minutes, and I would question whether he can remember it to this day. It was very quick, but it was so concise, so meaningful that it has had a profound effect on my own personal views about leadership. So I think it comes down to that respect and just clarity. And I'm sure that's a lot of people, a lot of people think about that with leadership as well, is it's clarity of message, clarity of vision, and openness. I find a lot of the time with certainly the way I perform is just constantly communicating and being clear with communication, because we have a school here with 100 teachers and about another 300 employees beyond that. You've got to be very, very clear on expectations and what is happening. Are we learning online next week? No. Are we learning offline? Just very always communicating. So I think what Dave had, apart from was my respect, was very good communication skills, very clear, very open.
I love that. Very clear, very open communication skills. Say there's someone listening and nodding along, going, I have to get better at that. What would your advice be from your experience being led by people like Dennis and Dave, but now having the opportunity to lead through a global pandemic like COVID? What have you learned about? I'm thinking like practically, how do you how do you do that? What have you learned? Are there any things that are sort of your go-to now in terms of what it looks like to make sure you're communicating clearly and in an open way?
Yeah, I think the first thing is listen. I know there's all sorts of cliches around listening more than speaking, but that's it for me. And, when we think about some big decisions have to be made. We've got 600 plus students here. Do every decision we make determines, the issues around health, well-being, safety, learning, teaching, it's all connected. So decisions have to be very sound. And I would never make a decision on my own. So I think there's one part there is listening to stakeholders within the community and listening to the leadership team around me. So no decision is mine and mine alone. I will listen to everybody. So listening, I think number one is the big one. But then every decision, I always say to the team then, okay, who's going to communicate this and how? What's the best medium? A meeting, a video cast, a podcast, an email, a WhatsApp, an Instagram dance. What's the best form of communication for this? So it becomes, by the way, I don't dance, just in case you wondered. Um, the you know what so I think it's firstly listen, get buy-in, make sure that all those people that you listen to know that you are listening and that you're not just nodding your head and biding time. And then once the decision's made, be very clear with that. And of course, when you have a community like ours with it's a multilingual community. Not everybody reads email. There's much more of a WhatsApp culture here in India. Some people don't read English or don't wish to read English, from me anyway. You've got to think of what are the most effective ways to communicate. So again, just because maybe a long email might suit me, it might not suit the person who's reading it. So there's that side of it. The empathetic side of it is to picture yourself on the receiving end of this as well, whether you're writing to teachers, students, or parents, or the board. So for me, listening, clarity of communication, and putting all that lot together, it enables the community to trust. If they know that views are being sought and listened to and acted upon, then they have greater trust in you, and the more trust they have in you, the easier things are.
Yeah, I really agree with how you've unpacked that. I love the blue ocean strategy, blue ocean strategy. The book they talk about, or it might be in Blue Ocean Shift. Blue Ocean Shift. One of those two books. They talk about how do you sort of engage your whole organization around significant strategy change. But I think it's the same. It's three E's, and I think it's the same for any sort of communication for leaders. Which is the first E is about engaging, which is what you're talking about, listening, and really going
Yeah,
big on actually making sure you're hearing from different stakeholders and you're not making a decision as a silo. And then, but that's sometimes I think we get stuck on that and we just talk about engage. But there's actually two other E's that they talk about, which the second one is explain. And it sounds so obvious. It's a bit like that listening cliche, right? But it's there's something I think a lot of leaders need to hear is that once you make the decision, sometimes we get a bit scared or oh, I don't know how some people will receive it, so we don't quite go all out with how we actually explain it. And I think realizing that if you've engaged people and the community well, then make sure you explain it clearly. If there's a decision in there that some people in the community disagree with, then give an explanation where you can around why you made that decision. And then the third one is expectations,
yeah,
which we've been chatting around about as well. So what does this mean in clear terms? What are the expectations moving forward? And I just love those three E's: engage, explain, and then expectations. Because if you can do that when you're doing any sort of stakeholder engagement, or just generally communicating and thinking in those terms, and always starting with listening, it can solve a
Yeah,
lot of
I
complicated
agree.
problems.
It's a great framework to keep in mind, isn't it? The three E's. I really like that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite books at the moment, actually, the Blue Ocean Strategy and the follow up Blue Ocean Shift. Great. They're probably in my top five at the moment. I really love it. The
Oh,
sort of books I'm
great.
rereading. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
fantastic. I'm interested to ask you about. You mentioned Dennis McKinnon, and I always
yeah.
love asking people about stories when they've had a leader. They go, "Oh, as a young sort of person coming through, he was a great leader." Do you remember any particular stories of how Dennis led that you think that was just the way he did that was amazing? Like, does anything come to mind?
I mean, I back in those days, I was in my mid 20s. I was living in the Bahamas. I was having a great lifestyle. I have to say, the lifestyle was maybe a little bit more important to me at that time than my career. And I ended up being the staff representative to be meeting with him about salary negotiations and that kind of a thing. And you can imagine there's me, age 26 or so, meeting with him to try to argue that the staff should have a pay rise of this, that, or the other, and that they should have these benefits and those benefits. And the way that he helped me to understand seeing life through a bigger picture. He really showed me that, if you ask for this, then the consequences are not only this but another thing, and if we do this, then we risk the school in that way. And he was so gentle and kind and caring in the way that he explained things. I mean, he as an experienced leader must have thought, this young lad, I could just fob him off. But he took time to explain to me, this is why we do this. I mean, it goes back to the three E's and the explain. And I got the rationale and I understood why basically everything that me and the teachers wanted was not possible because the school wasn't in a healthy situation. But that helped me to then take it back to the teachers and explain, we're not getting a pay rise because. But he helped me, and it was seeing the bigger picture and realizing that X plus one doesn't make one X. It actually can be many, many other things. Two plus two doesn't always make four, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
There's issues and consequences that I just couldn't have pictured. So he helped me with the big picture views. And as I said before, he's the one that said, you've got to leave the Bahamas. If you don't leave now, you'll never leave.
yeah. Wow, I think that's incredible that he was so gentle in how he went about it, and also I think the fact that that's a tricky. I know there'll be a lot of people listening who might have had some experiences with those sort of meetings and conversations about pay, and that can be a real minefield. And obviously, the way he navigated that with you, like you said, he actually explained it. One thing that I just about the three E's in the book. It's part of what they call in the book fair process, and the
Mm.
and it's so once again it's something that it's one of those ideas you hear it and you go, well, yes, that does make sense, but it's once you get it and use it as a filter. And this is what I love about what Dennis did with you in that situation is they argue in the book that it's like in our legal system there's due process, and it's like, you know
Yeah,
what, as a member of the community, I I won't necessarily be happy if someone who, if a criminal gets off because our, police have dropped the ball somewhere, but at the end of the day, I want to see due process. And for me,
yes,
if our courts and like if we are if we're following a due process through the police, through the courts, then even if it's actually when there's a lack of due process, that's when people get very up in arms. And it's the same thing in an organization, and they point out the fact that what people really want is a fair process. It's like, and that's where the
yeah,
three E's come in. If you take away one of those E's, you fail to engage, then people feel like it's unfair. I didn't get a voice at the table. But if you don't explain it, then it's unfair because I don't understand why. And if you don't give clear expectations, it's an unfair process because, well, I sort of understand the decision, but I haven't then understood what I'm meant to do with that, and now I'm getting in trouble, or and there's that lack of clarity, and it's such a simple term, but I love that idea of fair, and that's what he did with you. He gave you a fair process so that you were able to go, okay, yeah, I see this.
Yeah, which helped me then to deliver the message to the teachers that they didn't want to hear. But everyone kind of nods their head and goes, yeah, I get it. I see now.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, well, that's what I would love to. Before we jump into Leadership Express, I've had so much fun already chatting with you, Malcolm. I'd love to invite you back for another episode at some point because I've really wanted to chat about growth mindset and how do you empower people. And I'm looking at the time, going, I want to really give those the time they deserve. So sometime down the track, it'd be great to maybe do an episode where we really zoom in on those things.
Absolutely, great.
So let me do Leadership Express. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and just give me sort of the first thought or sentence, or you can have a moment to pause if you want as well, because I am just sort of giving you these on the spot. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. I did set you up with this one earlier, so this is a freebie. What is a book that you've gifted a lot to other people?
My book that I've gifted a lot is Bounce by Matthew Said. Matthew Said is a journalist now for the Times newspaper in the UK, but he was previously the British representative in the Olympics for table tennis in the early 90s. And you can also hear him on the podcast, Fred, Sav, and the ping pong guy. He is the ping pong guy, and Fred is Freddie Flintoff, the cricketer. So it's all growth mindset, and it's brilliant. I recommend it thoroughly.
Oh, I love that. Okay, Bounce. Oh, I'm going to check that out. That sounds, as we were talking about earlier, I
Matthew
love I
Said,
love all things sports. What
wonderful.
was his name
Yeah.
again? One more time.
Matthew Said, Syed. Two brilliant books.
Sweet.
One is Black Box Thinking, which is probably the first one you should read, Black Box Thinking, Matthew Said. And the
Yep.
second one is Bounce, also Matthew Said.
Oh,
Fantastic. Black
yeah.
Box
Can't
Thinking
wait to
is
check
more
him out.
growth mindset, and Bounce is more about talent and ability.
Love it. Any great podcasts that you're listening to at the moment, or other sources right now you're really enjoying reading, watching, listening to?
Apart from you,
Thank you.
oh, good grief. I always listen to Dylan William, who's an educator, so that's not too useful for everybody.
No,
But
that's okay.
I
There's
listen
lots of
to him because
educators
he's
listening.
provocative. Yeah, because he's provocative, and I don't agree
Yes,
with everything he says, so I like that.
Dylan William. Okay, great. What is a recent leadership lesson you've learned for the first time, or been reminded of?
That's a very good question. My goodness, I'm reminded of stuff all the time. Making assumptions. I think sometimes I can be quick to make an assumption based on my previous life experience. It's almost like stereotyping. This person thinks that because of this, and then you ask them and they don't. So yeah, don't make assumptions. Find out. Listen. It's all about listening.
That's great. And that's why I love any personality assessments with teams. Sometimes people think, why would you do that? Are you really going to do a deep dive on? But it's like half the time it's just about in a room or even virtually. My favorite right now, which I talk about a lot on the podcast, is Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni and the Table Group, which it looks at how we get work
Ah,
done. And half of the breakthrough, maybe even more, I'd say probably 90% of the breakthrough is looking at the people you work with and realizing, like, to put it bluntly, we've all been there where someone misses a deadline, someone drops a ball, someone doesn't finish something the way we would, and we assume
yeah.
they just didn't try, or even they're just not a nice person at some point. And it's actually realizing, okay, maybe they're not a terrible person, maybe they're just wired differently to me. Um, and that's, yeah,
Yes.
Working
I,
Genius is
I, I think
fantastic.
that's wonderful. That's a wonderful message because every workplace has people who are so different, and it's the valuing the different viewpoints and the different angles. And some people might say, "Oh, such and such has some strange ideas," and actually, it's the variety that we need in any team, as I'm sure everyone would agree. You've got to have those people that think a little bit differently. We
Yeah.
can't get involved in groupthink, and that's one of the keys to putting together a leadership team, isn't it?
Yes.
Having people who will stand up and disagree. And I'm lucky here at Trinity that we have a leadership team who will disagree very openly and very frequently. And that makes me much, much better at what I do.
Oh, I love it. Well said. What is a time management productivity tip or a tool or resource in that space you use?
Time management tip. Oh my goodness. Um, I mean, it's a very basic thing, but I set times in the day when I'll do emailing, and then the rest of the day I don't. So I set a time where I'll do the email responses, and then rest of the day I can work on stuff that needs to get done.
I think that's great. And I know that has been said different places, but I think more than ever, particularly remote work, and I think it's a good reminder for people, no matter what industry you're in, to try to find some version of that. All the research seems to point to it. So
Yeah.
no, thank you for sharing that.
Likewise, in the evenings, if we talk about work-life balance, how do we not get sucked down the angle of constantly checking emails and WhatsApps?
Yeah, I
We have to
agree.
discipline ourselves more than anything else.
Yeah, you're right. It is different to years back. What is a great piece of advice you've received in life, in leadership at some point? Looking back, there was someone who just gave you a piece of advice that is really memorable.
Ah, a great piece of advice that I remember.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be the most deep
Okay.
or profound thing.
Um, have fun.
Have
Enjoy it.
fun.
I had
Yes.
I had a couple of colleagues I had at the IB. What's the point of doing it if you're not enjoying it? In fact, one of my colleagues, Richard, who's from Brisbane, as it happens, and
Yeah.
is currently working in Brisbane as well. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. What's the point of doing a job if you don't enjoy it? What gets you out of bed in the morning is knowing that you've got meaningful, enjoyable challenges ahead, and enjoy it. It's if you've striven all of your life, if that's the right word, to become a leader, then enjoy it when you get there.
Yeah, that's I was going to look for an opportunity to talk about cricket. Um, but Usman Khawaja recently, who's now based here in Queensland, he recently came back out of nowhere for the Australian cricket team. Got pulled in at the last
Yes.
moment because of COVID. Travis Head had to sit out because he had COVID, and he came in. And one of the things that really struck me was I don't know, just a sense in how he played and watching his family, like his wife with their daughter, sort of doing a Lion King and lifting her up. That she was so excited when he scored a century. And the thing that really struck me was here's a guy that might have thought no, because he's 35. I've probably had my time in cricket as at an Australian, at a test level. And the thing that, yeah, of that whole situation, it was how he seemed to enjoy himself in this highly intense situation that really sat with me as interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for the reminder of his wonderful two innings, actually.
Yes,
Yeah, thanks for that. But yeah, we've got to have fun. Otherwise, what's the point?
I agree. Okay, a movie or TV show that really impacted you.
Schindler's List. I mean,
Wow. Yeah, it's a great movie, isn't it?
it's always have a big. It's the one that's always had the biggest impact on me. And again, I think in a lot of the leadership positions I've had, I've come into organisations where you have to respect the past to move forwards. I think with
Yes,
Schindler's List, again, it's about respecting and embracing and learning from the past, and hoping that the world can move forwards. And obviously, that's a far more significant and serious issue. But I think in life, we have to learn, um, and never repeat mistakes as we move forward. But it's a beautiful film anyway.
it is. Yeah, it is definitely a beautiful film, and if anyone out there hasn't watched it, then just a movie that challenges you around leading and around values and around the value of people doesn't get much. There's not a movie that does it much better than
No,
unpacking the story of
no.
Schindler's List. Incredible. Now, once again, I don't know if you can think of this off the top of your head, but are there any quotes that or is there a quote that you really love or you're particularly fond of for education or for leadership or life?
Um, Good grief, God! I've always had so many educational quotes that I've used time after time after time, and all these great growth mindset quotes. And here we are right now. I can't remember any of them.
Well, while you're
But
thinking,
it's, you know,
oh, you've thought of one?
it's all those, yeah, all those things about, every experience is a learning opportunity. It's about failing well. Anything. Again, I've got
Mm,
a great friend called Lance King, who's a Kiwi,
yeah.
and he talks about, you think about Jack Ma, who talked about, I failed, my job application to McDonald's, I failed to get into university, I failed to get into the police. But without failure, we never learn. And that's the essence of, if I was to come up with a quote and do it more accurately, I'd probably be quoting Jack Ma in talking about how, from Alibaba, about
Yeah.
failure is the way we learn.
Oh, that's excellent. That definitely counts. That's a wonderful story. It reminds me of a list I saw somewhere on, I think it was on social media, that sort of another angle on that is encouraging people who might be a bit older, and there might be those listening who haven't really stepped into a leadership role, but for some reason you're leaning into it now and wondering, oh, maybe I'm too old. But there's this great list of these people who have really stepped, like the one that comes to mind. There's many more, but is about Morgan Freeman and how he, even though he was an actor through his life, his first really major role was in his 50s. And
Really?
yeah, like he had other roles before, but that was his breakthrough. And I just love that because I think none of us think of that now. We just think, oh, Morgan Freeman, he's been around forever, doing it, just being
Yeah.
incredible at his craft. But he was working as an actor, but his breakthrough was in his 50s, and it's and just that encouragement to pick yourself up again. And if you feel passionate about that, to embrace failure. And yeah, so that just, when you mentioned Jack Ma failing, his application at McDonald's, it just reminded me of that. I can't remember who else was on that list, but if people Google it, it's really inspiring. There are so many people who've done incredible things very late in life. That's
Oh,
I just yeah,
wonderful.
it's really it's amazing. Um, what's a tip for finding and keeping great talent?
To help them to feel valued by ensuring that they're part of the decision making process, by giving them opportunity. It's about opportunity, and bringing those people with less experience through, giving them opportunity, helping them to feel empowered, and then they buy into both the vision, but also the way that you're going forward. So I would say, is bringing people in, empowering them in both decision making and actually being a part of projects. If you've got a number of initiatives going, seeing how many people want to volunteer to be part of initiatives, and giving them their leadership opportunities in that way. Because as a leader, you've only got so many hats. You can't wear every hat, and it's about delegation and ensuring that the load is spread, and that you get the right people doing the right things. There is that great phrase about the right people on the train, or the wrong people on the wrong train, or whatever it is, something like that. It's getting the right people on the right train.
Yeah, getting the right people on the right train. I really love that. Uh,
There is a quote there. There is a quote. I can't remember it exactly.
The I just by the way, I just found if anyone's interested in that, just because I know there's nothing worse than hearing something and thinking, and then you can't find it. If you look up inspiring list, famous people got their when they got their big break, something around that. You can Google it. But yeah, Morgan
Yeah.
Freeman was 52. The other one that I was going to tell you, which is I just these facts really fascinate me more than anything. But uh, Samuel Jackson didn't get his first movie role till he was 41. Alan Rickman gave up graphic
Wow.
design to pursue acting at 42. And Stan Lee, the comic, who wrote comic books and recently passed away in the past couple of
Yeah.
years, didn't release his first big comic book until he was 38. And so there you go.
Wow.
Anyone out there who's feeling like they're maybe too old, particularly for leadership, I hope you're feeling inspired to give it a go. Two more
Fantastic. Yeah.
Two more questions, Malcolm. We're nearly there.
Yeah.
If you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say?
Listen.
That's good. And you're not the first person to say
Simple
that,
as
and I
that.
love that.
Because a lot of leaders think it's about pontificating, and it comes back to the lesson I learned from Dave Monk. It's not that I've got this and I do this and do what I say and do what I say. Listen to what people need. Listen to what people want. Be empathetic and be humble.
Wonderful advice. Advice I wish I had taken on board when I was uh, taken on board more deeply in my 20s. What is the
Yeah,
best
I wish I had too.
What's the best thing that you're doing at the moment as a leader, and as a strategy and team, and what's the best thing you're doing at the moment at Serenity that other leaders should know about?
Yeah, I mean, there's such potential here at Trinity. As I say, beautiful campus outside the city, really lots of potential, some fantastic students, parents. So, what we've done is we've put together a strategic plan. It's not easy to say that with my new set of teeth. No, it's a strategic plan for the next 5 to 10 years. And what we've done is that what's great is not necessarily the plan itself, but the manner in which we've conducted the strategic planning. Every teacher, all sorts of non-teaching staff, parents, students, all sorts of people involved with it, so that it genuinely captures the needs and desires of this community moving forwards. And that means that whoever is in the leadership positions has a great roadmap towards the future, be it me or anybody else down the line. Obviously, I intend driving behind this for some time, but down the line, it's got to be people proof. So that's what I'm most proud of and excited by at the moment is our strategic planning process and the community involvement.
And is that available publicly for people to see the strategic plan if people are interested in checking it
Not
out?
yet. We're going to be publishing it in April.
Great. I just know there are a lot of leaders who anyone like me have been burnt from doing strategic plans themselves or being part of processes where it's you do it once a year, you put it away in the drawer, and so whenever I hear someone
Ah,
doing a really great strategic planning process, I always love to direct people to that because I think good strategic planning is actually quite rare. And if I know there'll be listeners like me who'll be going, oh, I'd love to check that out. So that's a good
yeah,
segue to
yeah.
the last point, which is where can people find you if people do want to connect with you? Where can people find Serenity online, and connect with you, LinkedIn, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Malcolm Nicholson, no H in Nicholson. It's the old Isle of Skye spelling. So LinkedIn, I'm on what's the Twitter at Mal Nicholson. Serenity, we're on Instagram. I have no idea what our handle is on Instagram, but you can find Serenity anywhere, and our website is sis.edu.in. And I would welcome anyone who's visiting India to pop by and say hello. As I said, Hyderabad's a wonderful, happening city, and we're just outside in the countryside. And I feel, very fortunate to be in this great community.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. I know you will have loved today's episode because I've just enjoyed it so much and gotten so much out of it, and I always think of myself as listener number one. You know, the first person who gets a chance to listen, and it's been great. So, thank you to our listeners, firstly, and don't forget, I also have the Leadership Question of the Day podcast where I give you a different question every day to put a stone in your shoe around leadership, and the John O. White Leadership podcast where it's me talking about things like 3 tips for casting vision and those sort of things. But the main person I really want to thank for being so generous and for just telling such great stories and sharing vulnerably about your life. It's been a real joy. So thank you so much for coming on and being on the podcast, Malcolm.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Great to be part of it. Thanks very much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And you know, my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, John O. White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out John O. White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.